You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you, and we have the unfortunate duty of wrapping up one of the worst series of the season for a Braves team that we've had to say that about more than a few times, and their awful, no good, terrible homestand came to a close with one of the worst losses of the season as well. And we're going to talk about it here and project forward on what it's going to take to get this team moving. But a spoiler alert, I'm not sure anybody has the answers, and you may not get it on the show, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. If you love honesty and baseball talk, subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Jake, as we watch this homestand go from one that had a lot of promise for the Braves to one in which you're kind of left just, I don't know, floored might be the word for it, and how bad it got and how quickly it turned that way. This is a club that a week ago we were thinking, well, are we seeing the signs of a second half surge? And now we can definitively say after this last 5 games, not so fast, and maybe not. And if it is going to happen, it's certainly not. We're not in the midst of it right now.
No, we're certainly not. I mean, this is a team that, as you said, a week ago even, we're looking at, okay, maybe they still have a shot at the division, and now you're out of a postseason spot. So, I mean, and again, also, as you've said, we've talked about it a lot this year, some bad stretches for this team. I think this has to be the worst when you look at it, a homestand, losing 2 to the Marlins, and then just getting absolutely embarrassed by the Brewers.
Now, you got boat raced by the Brewers, and let's just say, I mean, on a day yesterday or last night in which you maybe looked at the home plate umpire and were a little bit confused and frustrated and angry about that, and looked at a few other things that maybe just didn't go right for the Braves. This was not a game of missed calls and just a bad strike zone that was costly for them. This was not a game in which the Braves were ever really able to be competitive in it because of how quickly they got down and how deep that hole got and how fast it got that way over the first 3 frames in this game. I mean, this is just it was an amalgamation of everything that could have gone wrong for the Braves, pretty much going wrong in one day and in one series. And you mentioned the Marlins because you look back and the game that the Braves lost on the Saturday, that was one in which they jumped out to an early lead, and then the lights went out for the offense. They went out for 24 innings in the midst of this homestand. They lost the next day to the Marlins. They were shut out back-to-back days when the Brewers rolled into town. Then they pretty much definitively lost game 2 and once again lost a series as the losing streak reached 4. They came out trying to cling to whatever vestige they could get, whatever vestige was left for this homestand, and lost by a 16-7 score. I know we talked about the misery index of some of the Braves' worst losses yesterday, so no reason to bring them all back up. But I'm with you. This isn't just a bad loss, singular. This is a bad series for the Braves. One of the worst I can remember them playing at any time in recent memory, certainly since they got out of the rebuild.
45-15. That's how the Braves have been outscored over this 5-game stretch here that they've lost. I mean, it's not just that they're losing. Like you said, you can maybe look at that game on Wednesday against the Brewers and just say, okay, you had everything go against you in this one. You didn't help yourself out either, but it's a game you felt like you probably could have won if a couple of calls go your way and then things play out differently, obviously with the bullpen the rest of the way. You can't say that about really any of these other games. Except for that Saturday game against the Marlins, they probably should have won. I mean, you're just getting beat now, and you're not just getting beat, you're getting pummeled. I mean, that's just not the mark of a team that should be considering themselves very good at the moment. And I think that's just the nicest way that I can say it. This is not a good team at this moment. I'm still, I think like you, still hopeful and think that this team can turn things around. But you can't have bad stretches like this where you're just not even getting beat. You're just getting destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen crazier things happen, but the pendulum has swung so far between the spectrum of, is this a team that can win? And then all the way back to, is this team ever going to figure out a way to win? And there's really been no answer to that, obviously. This is a game that probably in the 5th inning could have ended under referee stoppage if it were a fight, because it was over at that point. It was really over when it was 8-0 through the 3rd, and that was a Charlie Morton start that couldn't have gone much worse for Charlie. This is the one of the worst, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in his career when we get into the box score of the game, which unfortunately we are going to read some of that as well. The Braves were outgunned, though, in every way by the Brewers across this 3-game series. It pushes them to not only the sweep there, but the 5-game losing streak as they drop back-to-back games against a Miami Marlins team that sold at the deadline and really wasn't putting out a club that you would expect to lose 2 games in a 4-game series to, let alone in the way that the Braves did, losing the final 2 after taking the first 2 in that 4-game set. And we can't sit here and point at the offense today, obviously, because Charlie Morton and company, it was pretty bad. Morton charged with 8 earned runs, didn't get out of the 3rd inning. Parker Dunshee, who was brought up from AAA Gwinnett, I didn't know who that was before this game. I'm not sure I need to know who it was after this game. 5 earned runs for him in 2 1/3 innings. Luke Jackson, Raisel Iglesias, and then your closer was not Raisel Iglesias this day. It was Luke Williams. And when you got a position player pitching in 2024, you know things have gotten pretty bad because the rules specify it's got to be a pretty awful lopsided game to even be eligible to throw a position player pitcher. That's how bad things have gotten.
And it's the second time in the last couple of days. I mean, that's how bad things have been for this Braves team, where Luke Williams is making appearance for you and having some of your better appearances for your pitching staff. And it's just, it's tough times. I cannot stand the position player pitching thing. I think it's just somewhat of embarrassment if they're at least not going up there and being David Fletcher and throwing some knuckleballs, or Charlie Culberson back in the day, who could at least throw some, made it a little bit more compelling. But I mean, embarrassing is a word that we've used a lot here lately for this Braves team. And I think that's just exactly what it is. And you say, it's not on the offense in this one. You can definitely say that. I said, yes, on yesterday's postcast, I want to see a game where the offense wins it. Well, I didn't know they were going to have to score 17 runs to win it. I think that's maybe asking a little bit too much, but this one is definitely on the pitching. It was over before it really got underway.
Yeah, I mean, again, the offense has been the real problem area for the Braves all season long. And even after a couple of the losses they've had in this losing streak, in the big picture, you can look at it and say the pitching hasn't been the problem for the Braves this year. And that is true. That doesn't mean there haven't been some bad games. There have. I get it. I'm watching the same team you are. I understand that some of these rotation choices that are being made in order to have 6 guys going, that was not really a strategy that I think is sustainable over a long period of time in terms of quality and not just quantity. Has it helped Chris Sale? I believe it has. Can it help Reynaldo Lopez as he's looking to kind of rest up here and get back in there? Sure, and it might have been a part of his success in the first half as well. The loss of Spencer Strider certainly hurts. Max Fried going down for a couple of weeks cast another shadow over this rotation. Charlie Morton getting blasted like this in this start certainly doesn't help the narrative that the Braves pitching is not the problem, but in the big picture, it hasn't been. It has been this offense. This was just one of those days where they never really had a chance to get the bats going unless they were going to be able to score those 17 runs that you mentioned earlier, as far as that's concerned. At this point, inside of this 5-game losing streak, though, the Braves went from a team looking like they could maybe make the NL East race interesting, 5 days ago? That's right, 5 days ago, to a club that looks like, they're not going to be in the postseason where the season to end today. They've been pushed out of those top 3 spots in the wild card. It's a bad stretch. And Jake, I don't know if I need to say it, but I'll say it anyway because we have to fill time on the show. They better figure it out ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, again, we keep saying, there's time left. Well, we're getting to that point now where there's not a lot of time left. And you have kind of this little bit of a break in your schedule. We talked about it, a week ago, where this was the time in your schedule. You were coming back with a homestand against a depleted Marlins team, a Brewers team you just beat, and then you're going out on the West Coast to face the Rockies and the Angels, 2 of the worst teams in baseball, and the Giants team just kind of, in the middle there.
Yeah.
And you felt like you had a chance to really go on a run, and they've obviously wasted this opportunity so far. Still, big West Coast trip coming up that I know we'll get into, but I mean, it has to start now. I mean, you are out of the postseason. Like you said, if the season ended today, you were out of the postseason. So we've been waiting on it all season for things to turn around. We've said it numerous times. This is rock bottom. I feel like this has to be for this team this year, for this, group of individuals that should be better than this and should be playing better than this. I feel like for this particular group, this has to be bottom for them. They've got to turn things around and get it going pretty quickly.
I haven't seen this much rock bottom since the late 90s in the WWF, when The Rock really rose to prominence and became a champion multiple times. For those of you that get the reference, congratulations. For those of you that don't, well, I don't know what else to offer you other than to tell you this has gone from bad to worse for the Braves, and it's done so several times at this point. And as you mentioned, a 10-game road trip is staring them in the face. And no, it's not against a bunch of the powerhouses in baseball, but considering what we've seen over the last 5 days and the rather uncompetitive nature of the Braves during this 5-game losing streak in general, you kind of have to worry and wonder about what exactly the Braves season will look like when this road trip is over, because once again, Atlanta is on this nice long string without any days off, no time to reset. They're going to have to shuffle some pitching plans. We can talk about that a little bit later on as well. And there's just a lot going on for the Braves, and unfortunately, not too much of it is too good right now. When we continue, we will jump into the line score and the box score of the 16-7 loss to the Brewers. Wrap up this series, look ahead to the road trip. Lots to come your way as the Locked On Braves postcast continues. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time has last-minute deals, and you can save up to 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There is so much to choose from, and Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for all of it. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Just create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off that first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. That's Game Time. Well, Jake, somewhere in my pile of papers here is a line score, box score, well, a full box score of this game that I am now going to read from. So if you were looking for more hope to be pumped into this edition of the show, we're probably not going to find it on this page. The Milwaukee Brewers pick up the win. They improved to 65-49. They were a team that really needed to turn things around and certainly got healthy at the Braves' expense. Atlanta drops to 60-54. And the final line for Milwaukee, 16 runs on 20 hits, 1 error, 11 men left on base. 7 runs, 10 hits, no errors, and 9 men left on for the Braves. Winning pitcher is Peguero in relief. He's 7-3 now for the Brewers. Charlie Morton takes the loss, obviously drops to 6-7 as he is tagged for 4 home runs in giving up 8 runs in 2 2/3 innings. It's just one of those days where there were 8 homers hit, 6 of them by the Brewers. But for Charlie, a career high in home runs allowed. We've seen some Jekyll and Hyde from him in the past. Of course, this season, we've seen some good ones. We've seen some that are kind of in the middle, and we've seen some like we saw today. But this, I think, Jake, is safe to say, has been the worst of the bunch for Charlie Morton.
Yeah, and it's a start. I talked about that. I was worried about the matchup coming into it, but I was worried because of the walks and the stolen bases, and that really wasn't the issue. It was the home runs, and it's something he really struggled with 2 years ago with the Braves. He had that season where he just gave a ton of home runs. Last year, I thought he got it a little bit more under control, but certainly came to play in this one. Was a hot day, hot afternoon there. The ball seemed to be traveling a little bit better, although some of these didn't need help that he gave up. But just a terrible start for Charlie Morton, like you said, who's been really up and down. It's one good, one bad, and it's just it's tough for Charlie Morton right now. You want to see some more consistency from him, even the guy that we've said, he's your 4th starter. But even in that, you just got to be able to have somebody that can give you some length. And that's another problem that the Braves are dealing with right now. All this long stretch of games, they did have the one off day on Monday, but now you're getting all these games where pitchers aren't giving you much length, and you're having to go through a lot of your bullpen and send guys up and down to try to get fresh arms. So it's a tough spot that the Braves are in. You want to at least see your veteran go out there and give you some innings, try to keep you in a game. Even if you give up a couple of runs early, that first inning, really first 2 innings, it was 2 out runs. He was getting 2 outs and then just couldn't get out of the inning. So just a frustrating start for Charlie Morton and the Braves. Just really needed him to step up and give you some length in this one, give the offense a chance, and he couldn't do it.
No, I'm going to give you some unfun trivia. Then we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on with the Braves pitching staff, obviously. Last time, a Braves starting pitcher gave up 4 home runs in a game. You want to wager a guess there?
I have no idea.
Well, it happened a year ago today.
Wow.
If that helps out.
Bryce Elder?
No, not Bryce Elder. No, I don't know if things got quite that bad for him. It was Yanni Chirinos who gave up 4 home runs a year ago today. I didn't know we'd bring that up. I didn't know we were observing that anniversary, but here we are talking about that. But unfortunately for Charlie, no, it was a forgettable start for him. And Parker Dunshee, who made his major league debut, he allowed 5 earned runs in 2 1/3 innings. The Brewers tagged him for a couple of homers as well. We'll stick a pin in that just to talk about where the Braves pitching staff is on the whole right now. As I talked about earlier, when you looked at the things that were just not going right for the Braves, their pitching had been pretty stable. Now, given there's been a lot of up and down and moving parts at the end of the rotation, but even despite that, if you were to look at the top pitching staffs in baseball, you've seen the Braves in the top 5 for most of the season. Now, these bad 3 games won't necessarily knock them out of the top 10 or put them in the bottom third, certainly, but the optics of it haven't been much fun. And now you have to wonder, Jake, I think going forward, what is this all going to look like? The Braves are going to skip Spencer Schwellenbach or at least push his start back. Rather than throwing him in game 1 in Colorado, it's going to be Grant Holmes. That's certainly a discussion point. Max Fried came back, didn't exactly look sharp, said he felt good, so that's a plus, but Reynaldo Lopez landed on the IL right after that. Obviously, Charlie Morton having this bad start. Chris Sale, if that's a bad start by his standards, I can certainly live with it. The Brewers were quite pesky, and he did not get a few calls, which might have cost him, and a few plays behind him that could have been made, certainly. But you're just not feeling great about what's going on 1 through 5 in this rotation, let alone trying to rotate a 6th man in there. I know Grant Holmes has kind of been tapped as somebody who's going to step in and make some starts here right now. But I guess I say all that to say I understand some of the reasons why they're doing this. And clearly it all goes back to no Spencer Strider started this whole routine. But if you're looking at ways to keep this guy or that guy rested in hopes that they're going to pitch meaningful innings in October, and you're in the situation that you're in right now, I think every inning is pretty meaningful at this point, and I don't know if that strategy is – I'm sure it's not written just for one reason, and that there are clearly, health considerations and whatnot into it, but I don't know if that strategy is serving the Braves right now, if I'm making a long story short.
Yeah, well, I felt like that strategy in the first half was smart to have guys ready for the second half of the season, and now we're in the second half. You're out of a postseason spot. I feel like you got to take the training wheels off a little bit. I know for Spencer Schwellenbach, look, the guy's thrown 65 professional innings. You don't want to just blow out his career like that. I can understand it with him a little bit, but I just don't feel like you haven't been given this opportunity, the situation to do that anymore. You have to now every 5th day. It's got to be your best starter going out there at this point for the Atlanta Braves. But the other thing that this does is it makes me even more, I don't know, upset's not the right word.
Confused?
They missed out on so many opportunities early in this year with how good this pitching staff was because the offense just couldn't be mediocre. And you wasted that great run of pitching that you had because you didn't have any offense. And now the pitching is kind of wearing down. You're seeing maybe a little bit of regression. Maybe you are seeing some tiredness. And you're seeing the Braves still trying to keep these guys healthy. And so now the pitching has taken a step back. And it makes me think more about how this pitching was wasted so much in the first half of the season by lack of offense. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of missed opportunities there in hindsight. And all of that, I think, can be, like the vast majority of it can be laid at the feet of an offense that, for a multitude of reasons wasn't working. There was some regression that was in there. Losing Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, all of that hasn't helped. I know some people will say, and I read this stuff on social all the time, it's more than just injuries with this club. Yeah, well, no kidding. It is. But that's certainly a major part of it when you lose the National League MVP, who wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire before he got hurt to begin with, and then you take away Michael Harris. I mean, looking at this overall, I looked at the Braves outfield, and we talked a little bit about it, but it's been a black hole for Atlanta. And they cut Eddie Rosario loose because that didn't help. And I don't think anybody expected him to solve the problem, but maybe come in and be at least a replacement level player would have been helpful. Same thing for the signing of Adam Duvall. That hasn't paid dividends the way that the Braves were hoping that it would, because he was the biggest hedge against one of your outfielders getting hurt. And Adam Duvall hasn't been able to come in and do anything close to what he did for Boston a year ago or the Braves prior to that. So it just seems like, and we can try to unpack all the different reasons because it's a riddle wrapped inside an enigma at this point if you're trying to figure out the Braves offense. But whatever they're trying, for the most part, is not working. The injuries have hurt. Guys being in long cold streaks have certainly not helped. Marcell Ozuna has been the one steady force in the lineup. Austin Riley seemingly has joined him. Beyond that, it seems to be a week-to-week thing for a lot of other Braves hitters, and that's simply just not going to get the job done.
It's not, and it's, it takes away that depth that you had in this lineup. Obviously, when you take those injuries, but it's just everything else mixed in there. With you get one guy back and another one goes out, and then one guy gets hot, another guy gets cold. It's just there has not been that right mix all year for this team offensively, and they just haven't been able to find those right answers. Duvall's a fine guy to come off the bench and help you and maybe hit against lefties, but you put him out there as a starter for a month or two, and he's just not that guy anymore. Same for Eddie Rosario, and they just haven't been able to find those full-time replacements for some of these guys like Michael Harris and Acuna, who have been out for long periods of time.
And think about this. I mean, there's not going to be, at least I don't think, too many times where you're going to lose players like Ronald Acuna Jr. and Michael Harris and have like a secondary or backup plan that's going to even come close to approaching what you're going to get.
You just need average. We're just looking for something average.
Exactly. And even the pieces they brought in have not worked. Some of them have gotten hurt before they could even do anything. And the others, it was just trying to, I think, do something before the trade deadline. And then you made a move for a player that you think could help you and still could in Jorge Soler, but it was far from a perfect deal. But I think it was the best that they could do. And you look back at the trade deadline, not a lot of great impact pitchers went, and the price of some of the guys who were traded was incredibly high. I don't blame the Braves for not wanting to part with 2, 3, 4 top prospects in the season that they're having right now to go out and get a 4th or 5th starter type at that price. And there just weren't a lot of impact players on the hitting side that were traded either. So it's just, you can't really look around and say, we've got, buyer's remorse, I guess, at this point, or I don't even know if it's buyer's remorse if you don't buy it to begin with, but it's something, and none of it's good. To put a pin in the series, or put a bow on the series if you wanted one, which most people probably didn't, the Brewers torched Atlanta's pitching for 16 hits at least in all 3 of these games, 34 runs in total, 20 hits plus 6 home runs on Thursday. When you dig a hole that deep, as we talked about, the offense can't really be the story as to why you didn't win. 7 runs, a couple of homers for the Braves. Austin Riley, Marcell Ozuna each had 2 hits in addition to those home runs. But again, the offense, for once, was not the big reason why the Braves weren't able to win this ball game. And I say for once, but it's felt like more than a few times here lately as well. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk about what's up next for the Braves, including this 10-game road trip that is going to begin in Colorado. Not always known as a great place to go if you're a pitcher. Well, we'll find out how it treats the Atlanta Braves. We'll talk about it next on the Braves Postcast. Get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trade. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to get you the help you need and get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, you get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and you get to talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can also get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Well, Jake, a 10-game road trip awaits the Braves. They'll be heading to Colorado, where they'll get things started this weekend. We'll get to that in a moment. We touched on this earlier in talking about the Braves outfield and things that didn't work. Several roster moves Atlanta made before getting things going with the Brewers on Thursday afternoon, designating Eddie Rosario for assignment. He batted $153 with 3 homers in 24 games with the Braves. It's safe to say simply this one did not work for the Braves, and it's not the only move they've made that just hasn't paid dividends.
Yeah, I mean, it was taking a shot on a guy who was, essentially risk-free at the time, a guy who had familiarity here, and just hoping for something to happen, and unfortunately just wasn't the case for Eddie Rosario. And so now you bring up Eli White, who has reverse splits at the minor league level this year. I really don't know how much we'll see him because he could get Michael Harris back on this road trip very quickly. But again, just, unfortunate. You're really hoping to have some Eddie magic back, and just wasn't the case this time around.
No, it wasn't. And I think that, again, the Braves were just trying something in a deficit of just healthy players in their outfield, quite frankly, for a while. And again, nobody's going to be replacing Ronald Acuna Jr. That's going to be the biggest, most gaping hole on the offensive side until they get him back. this lineup isn't really designed to work the same without him, because he's one of the best players in baseball. And that's just the start of what hasn't gone right for the Braves offense this year. This outfield has been an absolute black hole, and they've thrown a lot of spare parts at it, and they just haven't worked out. Speaking of outfielders, though, and guys who are not spare parts, Michael Harris was in Gwinnett. Game 3 of his rehab assignment. He played center field, Jake, hitless in 2 at-bats, did draw a walk, but I think seeing him get back out in the field, that's yet another box that you needed to check in hopes of having him back when he is first eligible to come off the injured list, which is in 5 days, beginning on Friday.
Yeah, would love to have him back in this lineup. We talked about it yesterday. And again, I understand he was struggling even before getting injured, but I mean, the bar is not high to clear for an upgrade in this offense right now for the guys that we're talking about. So getting somebody like Michael Harris back, who we know is super talented and brings that different element to this lineup that's been missing, with some speed in there as well, and good defense in center field, it kind of allows Kelenic to go back to a corner spot where he's more comfortable. So I think a lot of good things could come of Michael Harris returning.
Yeah, it's just the start of things that the Braves certainly are trying to figure out. How can they just get somebody to step in and maybe provide a little bit of a spark? Harris could do that. We'll see what they decide to do with him in terms of where he hits in the order. I think he probably slots in there somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 range for Atlanta. We'll see. Jared Kelenic got the start in center field and leading off for the Braves on Sunday as Jorge Soler got a day of rest. But, again, you got to get Soler going. You got to get Michael Harris back. You hope to have Ozzie Albies back in September, but it's a fair question to ask. And I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Jake, where will this team be in 4 weeks when Ozzie Albies might be approaching his return?
Yeah, I mean, with the way things are going right now, if you keep playing like this, it's who's to say? I think this team I believe this team will still be in it and be in a hunt for a postseason spot. But after this 5-stretch game that we've seen, I don't know that I can definitively say that anymore. But I do think they'll be in it, but definitely, scrapping and clawing just to stay right now in that wild card race with the Padres and Diamondbacks team that really seems to be taking off.
Yeah, they're playing their best baseball at the right time, certainly. 10-game road trip begins in Colorado, happens on Friday, first of a 3-game set, as Grant Holmes will get to start for the Braves. He'll face Tanner Gordon of the Rockies. 5-game losing streak Atlanta carries into this one. An unfun place for pitchers. I talked about that earlier, and I also touched on the fact that it looks like, in addition to resting or trying to get more time between starts for some of their veteran pitchers, I think we're now seeing that with Spencer Schwellenbach as well. At least that's the way I was reading the tea leaves. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's the same. Like I said, he's 65 professional innings, 2 years after removed from Tommy John surgery. So certainly don't want to push him. And I understand that. A young kid who has a bright future. But man, the Braves need him as good as he's been. They certainly need him in their pitching. They need him healthy. They need him ready to go. Tough start for Grant Holmes. I don't know that he's pitched in Coors before. Obviously, it's an adjustment for pitchers. So could be a tough matchup for him. Hopefully, the offense that has scored some run the last couple of days, and hopefully that continues as they go into Colorado. And hopefully Max Fried looks a little bit better this time around.
Yeah, rule of thumb for Grant Holmes, next time he goes to a place other than his home ballpark is probably the first time he's pitched there after waiting a decade to get here. He's happy to pitch wherever it is. I'm sure he doesn't mind. I talked to him last week. He's still living the dream there, but the Braves need him to pitch them or give them at least something approaching some quality innings to help give this bullpen a little bit of a break after the way things went in this series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Again, Grant Holmes, he's making his 3rd start for the Braves, no record in ERA of 3. It'll be his 13th appearance, and Tanner Gordon, who is 0-3 with a 6.75 ERA, will oppose him. It's a Friday night, 8:40 p.m. Eastern time first pitch at Coors Field as the Braves and Rockies meet for the first of their 3-game series. After that's the trip to the Giants, and then you'll see the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of Orange County, California, and our old friend Ron Washington on this trip. That should be an interesting little stopover. But again, if we don't know how things are going to look next month, when you could be as healthy as you're going to be, we don't even know how things are going to look this time next week, because think about where we were 5 days ago, a very, very different place. And we are now at the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast as well. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Share the show with a friend, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Once again, the Braves swept by the Brewers. They're going to try to snap a 5-game losing streak as they roll into Colorado on Friday. They'll be there for 3 games this weekend, and we will catch up with you soon. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. Until next time, so long, everyone.